All right. Does everyone see a record button? Is it just me?
I don't see anything. It's probably just you.
I see the live at the top corner.
Oh, okay.
Do you? I don't. Huh.
Is it caught up with you yet? She's so far away.
I'm sure it's probably recording. I just can't see it. I'm on my phone, and that always makes it weird.
Oh, yeah. It always makes it different. Okay. Part 1 on the diversity paradigms. One person at a time to explain the different paradigms. Assimilation, differentiation, and integration.
Okay, I'm still pulling that up. I read it. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. I have to find it. I can't remember.
Well, assimilation. Or do you want to go first, Skylar?
For which one?
Which you're supposed to tell me what how you feel about all three. If you understand them.
What the words mean, or just from the reading?
The programs or the paradigms. Let's do one at a time as a group.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that makes.
To me, it makes more sense.
Yeah, I'm just opening it up so we can follow. I can follow along. Well.
See, I read this and I remember the differences, but I can't remember the names. That's my problem.
Assimilation. It reminds me of the Borg.
Yeah, because I know there was the one. I can't remember what it was called, but they bring, they do get the diversity in there, but then they assimilate everyone, and so everyone's supposed to be the same and do the same thing, so they don't I guess, use people's differences, their different viewpoints, being a different race or ethnicity or whatever it is.
They want everyone to be the same.
Yes, they don't utilize their differences.
That's what I say about Apple phones and computers.
Yeah, and the name of that one.
And I relate that to Satan's plan.
Yeah, make everybody be the same.
Yeah, and do everything the same way.
Yeah.
And
so that's kind of what I got out of last week's reading as well. Is just when we were talking about the different groups, like everyone's the same. The quizzes that we had,
right?
Every group's the same. I don't see color, like the blind, I don't see color or race or whatever that it's kind of like what we were just talking about, is like you don't take advantage of like the different.
And is this reading kind of to me stated too is sort of was the beginning. It was forced down people's throats. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That you will do this and that you will treat everyone the same. Mm-hmm. And it was their way to get things started. To me, it's kind of like a pendulum, We will all do this, and they forced it. So then we go on to, I'm going to say this right, differential paradigm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, I found the name. It was access and legitimacy paradigm. So the next one was is that the one where they get the different races, but then they kind of, or the differences, the different people, I shouldn't say just race, so their differences, but they kind of pigeonhole them.
And they we celebrate the differences.
Yeah, but they don't. Mm-hmm. But they don't learn from it. They exploit it, but don't learn from it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I said for me, it feels like a pendulum that we went, okay, you will accept everyone's differences. And then everyone goes, okay, we do accept everyone's differences, but we're going to keep them in their differences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make us?
Yeah. Because that was the one I was just talking about, like color blind and gender blind.
Right.
Conformism.
So, let's see. If you have any examples of any of that ever happening. See, I could go way back, but y'all don't want to go back that far to the beginning of this. When I was right out of high school, I worked for a small, so y'all wouldn't even know what it is, called a stamp company. When you went to grocery stores and gas stations, they gave you trading stamps.
Yeah.
And you filled these little books, and then you would trade your books for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and like I said, I was only 18 when I went to work for this company, and I had a young girl and her mom come up. They were African American, and she was looking for her daughter to fill out an application, right? So I went back to our manager, which was without a doubt, he was racist, bigot, male chauvinist pig. There's no doubt about it. He didn't hide it at all, because we're talking like 1980, right?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, there's a young lady out front that would apply for a job. And he actually looked at me and go, is she black? I looked at him and I go, I didn't notice, and walked away. Like, you
Good
could
for
have talked
you.
to her one way or another,
Yeah.
right?
Good for you.
Yeah, he didn't like me a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I have also seen the same thing too in the military, where I was passed up for promotion because I had a chief that was from the dark ages look at me and go, but you're a female, you'll get married, get pregnant. You're married, you'll get pregnant, you'll get out. So why should we waste a promotion on you?
Yeah,
I guess that's why we have those equal opportunity laws now.
Yes.
Uh,
And if I had been smarter and knew about it, I would have took him up on charges back then, right?
Yeah.
I feel like
And
we're more aware of it now, though.
Yeah, that's what I would say. You jumped. If I jumped 10 years to like, I guess it was 1989, right? So almost 10 years. We met on a small remote island. There's only 500 people. You imagine only 50 women.
Mhm.
And I'd had an incident happen to me, but I watched a senior enlisted guy start making bets with like an airman way under him, right, making him uncomfortable
Mhm.
about a new female that had hit the island.
Uh,
Yeah, so I took it to the commander and told her what was going on. You know, it was a female commander, and turns out this poor guy. We found out he was a closet alcoholic, and all kinds of stuff came out when we brought up these charges.
I don't know.
And it was just him acting inappropriate and talking inappropriately about a woman, not really harassing her, but
Yeah.
he made someone else feel bad.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Melanie Hobson, y'all watched the video, I'm sure, about color blindness. Why is it dangerous?
Well, like we were talking about here with these different paradigms, I mean, color blindness, like it's saying you don't see their color, or you don't, or whatever it is, you don't recognize their differences. You can't see their point of view. I mean, you want to talk to them, get to know them, see their different point of view because they have, important things to say too.
I thought the example of the Chinese cook, she was a chemist and she thought she could only use chemistry to improve their product, that she couldn't use her. They were working on a Chinese dish, but she wasn't supposed to bring her tradition or stuff she knew from her parents and traditional cooking into the mix.
Yeah.
Sounded crazy, right?
Yeah.
That was this, especially when you're talking Chinese cooking, to not use this tapped resource they had right there.
Right.
You would think they would look at it and go, how would your grandmother cook this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also like a fear, like you guys were just saying, like a fear of being racist, that we don't take advantage of the cultural differences and we don't take advantage of the, like, I guess, national experiences that other people might have. People who might be from, Ghana, or might be from Europe or France, or, other places where their culture is different. And if we are just colorblind and gender blind, then we don't take advantages of the strengths that other people might have. Like you
and
were
me
just
and
saying.
Christy are kind of at a disadvantage because being in the military and you travel, you actually learn to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually also see reverse discrimination. You're an American, so a little
Which
bit.
I bet is weird. I bet that's a weird concept. I mean, I guess if you've been a military wife your whole life and you've been in the military, and so that's definitely a unique perspective.
It's strange to go abroad and then come back. Like I grew up in a small town. I grew up in South Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when we came back after being in Japan for 6 years,
Yeah.
and I had left South Carolina when I was 18, and then we get stationed back in South Carolina, and it was horrible to come back and see some of the mentality that was still there.
Yeah.
Nothing had changed in 20-something years. It's kind of hard to deal with, especially with your own family.
Yeah.
Because that's just where they are still mentally.
Yeah. I mean, I've never served in the military, but I served a mission in Chile, and obviously that's only 2 years. It's no amount that you guys are used to, but the culture was so different, and you're the minority I was the minority for like the first time in my entire life, where I got to see discrimination, and people would make fun of you because of the way you dress or the way you talk, or your accent's not good enough and things like that. And so you see that and you see the things that they think matter, and it's completely different than what the things that we decide matter.
Even cultural differences in the church.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in Japan, you know how our buildings are so pristine.
Yeah.
Public buildings in Japan, they usually have tile, but the chapel still had carpet. And we wanted the carpet changed, and they're like, no, they weren't going to do it because for them it was a public building. They didn't see where it was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just thinking the carpet is disgusting at this point because we would have changed it out a while ago. But for them, it was different because that's, not where they put their priorities.
Yeah.
They're like, it's public, it's going to get dirty anyway. You just deal with it.
Right.
They thought the money should be used, and I can understand that money should be used somewhere else, but there are some things you just have to learn that are different.
Yeah. I
was stationed with a gentleman who wasn't Muslim, but he celebrated Kwanzaa. And I always do gifts for the guys that we work with in our unit. Mm-hmm. And I felt bad because I felt like, I wanted to make him something, but I didn't think he would accept it. So I asked him, and, I offered him one. I didn't say tell him he had to take it, but he actually was okay with it because he told me I used the Kwanzaa colors and it was handmade. And that's kind of one of the traditions of Kwanzaa. But, and so I learned more about Kwanzaa by asking him if it would be okay if I do something for him, yeah. So, let's see. Trying to think about us. So what do you think of the approach of the I'm trying to remember the integration paradigm in business? How do you get it to work?
That's the third paradigm, right?
It's the new, the one we're all supposed to be working toward. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a merging of the two. I've been looking at my writing assignment this week is to write a diversity policy. You can find EEO policies, diversity policies. You can see little write-ups in like websites, but you don't see like a policy. They just discuss we're diverse, blah, blah, blah. But one did show that it's supposed to be a merger of EEO policies and cultural policies merged together, kind of. It was kind of an interesting, I thought, a diagram to show. It kind of showed what they're trying to, get across.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking here at the reading. They have a good list of things, I guess, that are necessary for it to work.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership must understand that a diverse workforce will embody different perspectives and approaches to work and must truly value variety of opinion. So, I mean, it starts with the mindset of, the bosses and the management and all of them just be willing to accept the differences and learn from them.
Yeah.
And then it says you must recognize the learning opportunities and the challenges that the expression of different perspectives present for an organization. I know they talk in there, sometimes it takes a little time when you're switching over to this new, what do you call this? This new way of...
new paradigm.
New paradigm. New way. Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. There's some growing pains. Let's see. Must have a culture of high expectations and standards and performance from everyone. Doesn't mean it has to be the same way, but everybody should be expected to perform those high standards. Let's see.
I was going to share this chart with you guys. I thought was interesting. I found if I can find it.
Okay.
If it's going to let me bring it up. Let me know if y'all see it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Embracing diversity.
Because we have the EEO laws we have to do and affirmative action laws.
Yeah.
They're showing how they're trying to put them all together to make equity.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's another thing is learn the difference between equity and equality. There's a little bit of a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the difference between equity and equality?
Equity is more like a value of something, so somebody's personal value to, in the workplace.
Okay.
And then equality is just everybody's the same. So giving everybody the same opportunity, giving everybody, a level playing field.
There's this cartoon and it shows equality this way that there's a parade on the other side of the fence, and there's the person who can see over the fence, and then there's people who can't see over the fence. So they build boxes to make them, and that made it equal for everyone. And then it showed an equality one. Is what it did is it drilled holes in the fence where people could see through the fence at their light. They didn't have to be inconvenienced with climbing or adjusting to the other person's view. Does that make any sense?
I get it.
Yeah, we're supposed to accept people for who they are, where they're at.
Yep.
Trying to think if I've covered enough of the section 1. Okay. What do you all feel? This part 2 is about color brave, and what do you think color braveness would look like in a workplace?
Well, I think it looks a lot like this new paradigm that we're talking about. It's being willing to ask people about their point of view, ask them what they've experienced, be willing to learn from them. It's not shying away from asking and learning.
Yeah, it's like the African American who hired the African American, and then he's disappointed because not being the manager he thought she should be.
Or the guy who was the Muslim who was in charge, and the boss asked him about things that might have come off a little bit. I guess he said that they were racist, but instead of just taking it as, oh, they want to learn about my culture and my ideals, which are different from obviously everybody else in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Is it's a two-way street. When someone asks you about your background, not to take offense. Right? At least figure out what they're doing first, right?
Yeah, because in that example, like when it was asking you like who had the case, it was kind of hard because I was like, well, you could take offense to that, especially that was around September 11th. So that could be a really hard thing to, maybe you get, asked that all the time on the street, or you get looked at on the street in a disgusted way and things like that. And so it might be a little bit hard to take things the right way. But at the same time, it's like, was he meaning to be racist? Was he meaning to be offensive?
Right. It's like, we went to a different little town to find a chicken place here when we first moved here in Florida. It's in a mostly African-American neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. And when we walked in, you should have seen the dirty looks we got as a white couple. And also and they were shocked when we said we were going to stay and eat. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Huh? It's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I like what you said, being a two-way street. Color brave is not taking offense, but also you taking care not to try and offend somebody while asking about their culture.
Right. Because that's what the example of the African American, he hired an African American woman because he'd seen her out in the community being a great leader. Mm-hmm. And then when she wasn't being that leader at work, he wanted to fire her. He didn't call her in and say, I hired you because I saw you doing this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Because he thought it would seem like, he's being, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word. What do they call you? They call men now that are predominant over women. They still call them chauvinist? Or is there a new word? No, chauvinist. Yeah. But he didn't ask her. He just was going to fire her. He didn't want to figure out why she wasn't being what she was being. Yeah. And it took a CEO over her to set all three of them down and go, he hired you for these reasons. And she goes, oh, well, I didn't think my management style would be allowed here. Yeah. And the fact that she thought that she had to stick to a certain, it's really hard to go into being a boss.
Yeah.
I had to write my personal statement for one of my business classes and I gave that example of going from being a coworker to suddenly you're over somebody and you have to shift how you act toward that person a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, and I had a boss over me who was giving me the same old line that she'd been using for the last, because I'd only been there 6 months, that you can't do this, you can't do that, because we have a manning shortage and all this sort of stuff. So I started digging into the records. They'd had a manning shortage for like 5 years or more. You can't keep denying people vacation time or time off.
Because of that.
Yeah, you have to adjust your work schedules and just deal with it, right?
Yep.
And but these poor, I had these three airmen, all male. They'd had several female supervisors in the last year and a half, and they just got to where they hated women and assumed I was going to be the same way again. And when I stood up for them and got them time off and protected them, they actually started turning around, you know?
Yeah.
And it just showed to me, and it proved my philosophy in life, that you just have to live by the golden rule and treat everyone the same, the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So, when she asked John Skipper, the ESPN president, do we hire the minority or do we hire the most qualified? And he said yes. What do y'all think that meant?
Yes, as in it's kind of up to you to decide what kind of person you're going to be or what kind of leader you're going to be. I guess it just.
So.
That's funny.
I agree with that. It was a little confusing to me, but yeah.
Yeah, it was confusing to me too, because I'm like, what is he's saying?
It's like when you ask a yes or no or when you ask a specific question and
like, what do you want for dinner? And all you get is food.
Or yes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's not very helpful, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, they leave it in the ball in your court, I guess.
So do you believe this is the right approach to hiring for diversity?
Sorry, what was that? It cut out a little bit.
It goes, do you believe this is the right approach to hiring for diversity? When you left it up to her. So.
Well, I'm wondering if that statement kind of also meant, like,
what's our priority?
A statement that maybe the minorities are the most qualified workers. Like, you have to really believe it's the most qualified workers. I don't know. I'm not saying it right, but I think can be a good strategy. Yeah.
I think she was also asking what ESPN's policy was. Are we worried about the numbers, or are we worried about the best qualified?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's hard. Yeah, maybe a combination of the two, I guess. I mean, you wouldn't take somebody off the street and say, "Oh, we need this many African Americans, this many women, this many," and we need.
But they have done that under equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're trying.
I don't think it's quite taking people off the street, but.
But it's like when they go to college, when they go for college applications, they will actually be looking for diversity and actually not to necessarily take the most qualified students.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always think it's the best policy to hire the most qualified worker, but I think it's also about having the mindset that we really need to be open to diversity and that they are really good quality workers. There are good quality workers there. There are really qualified workers, and just kind of.
I like the one about
attitude.
The bank example that they had the people who they had a policy where you always had to have a degree to be a loan officer, and then the people who'd come up through the ranks and had started learning and doing the algorithms and basically doing everything a loan officer was doing. They decided to sit down in management and go, "Why aren't we being allowed to be promoted?" And they're going, "Well, because you don't have a degree." And they're like, "Really?" Because that's using the paradigm. There's only one way to get an education. Where these people had actually been trained on the job and probably had just as much knowledge or more knowledge as let's say they need a new loan officer, and because they're not going to hire anybody in the company that doesn't have a degree, so they're going to hire a new kid out of college.
Yeah.
And that kid's going to make more money because they got a degree. That's not fair to all these people who have been working with them for decades.
Right.
Mhm.
So it can be more, and I think that's the new thing too about the integration thing, is trying to put that there's more than just race and color and culture, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more there than just. It was like there's management style, there's education, there's social class
Yeah.
Mhm.
that we have to consider, and
Yeah.
not everything can be checked off in a box.
Yeah.
So,
And I have a brother-in-law. He's like that. You know, he never went to college, but you know, he's one of the smartest people I know. And it's just because he's willing to learn. Like he gets in there and he learns and he does it in his own way.
well, that's what,
And it's amazing what he can do.
when computers first started hitting in the military in the 1980s. They just dumped the Z100 and a box with a computer and a box with books in it, and you had to learn it on your own.
Wow.
There really weren't that many, there were the big college computer degrees that did the mainframes and stuff, but there wasn't anything for like a desktop.
Yeah.
And my husband, because of him, he's been doing computers. We've been doing them since like 1983 and or self-taught.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain positions he can't hold at his company because he doesn't have a degree.
Wow. That's unfortunate.
But at the same time, he gets some promotion because he has more technical skills than people who do have a degree. So.
Right. And that's where performance appraisals, that's where that comes in like really handy, is because you can be deemed to have experience even though you don't have, the college education, and they can see what you've contributed. And so that's why it's important.
In my HR interview, it was interesting. The lady I talked to, I found out there's more than one HR person for the county, but she does it for the Board of Commissioners. She doesn't even, technically, she's not a resident of our county. She lives on the West Coast.
Oh, wow.
So she says, and that helps actually because it keeps her out of the local politics.
Mm-hmm.
But she says, and she has to convince people that you can't hire someone just because they're a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. I mean, nepotism is part of, it will always be part of hiring. That's why LinkedIn exists, because you're using nepotism, friends of friends, to help you get jobs, basically.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's just made it electronic. So, but also, and she says, but you had the same, we're a small town, a small community. They'll go, oh, I don't want to hire them because I know they're married to so-and-so and I don't like that person.
Oh.
They're part of this family or that family.
Yeah.
And so it goes all kinds of ways. That's why I don't think I could be a human resource. It'd be like being a full-time mom for like 200 or 300 people.
Yeah, because you're the one who has to step into the conflict, even though it has nothing to do with you. And that's just an interesting way of doing things.
And as you study more and more about conflict and relationships, it's like in the military, whenever I'd have problems with any problems at work, I would talk to them each individually and hear their version, because everyone has their own version, because you are carrying your own baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And so you take everyone's version, because there's no truth in one person's version, if you ask me. Yeah. You have to hear everybody's and then piece it together and then figure out where they're all coming from and then bring them all together and try to get them to see each other's point of views.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
So, part 3. Counseling. The Elder Ballard's talk on ward councils and how he described the integration paradigm. Explain how you think he did that.
I'm going to glance over that again really quick. It's been several days since I read it.
Well, he just talks about ward councils in general. And if you've ever been one, if you live in small towns, you usually end up on the ward council at some point.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so I remember him talking in here and saying, there's the bishop, and he needs to make sure and ask for everybody's input, because you get even better solutions. And what was the original question?
Was do you see the integration paradigm working on a ward council? I guess is how he says, does the ward council he described follow the integration paradigm?
Yeah, because he was asking for the input of like the Relief Society and like the Elders Quorum and the High Priest, different ages, different genders, different organizations. They all have different viewpoints, because they're looking out for their own, they come from somewhere different.
Yeah.
Each of their opinions matter. It's not just, well, we're only going to hear from the Relief Society today, or we're only going to hear from the Elders Quorum today. It's a council for a reason, to hear everybody's different organizations and what they need.
And as they said, it should come from everywhere. It's like when you're trying to plan an activity, they'll decide to plan a picnic, but then they won't plan any activities to keep the kids busy. You need a little bit of everybody's input. You're trying to help a family, and they'll get them into a house, but then they forget to talk to Relief Society and make sure that people have food and furniture. There's gaps when we don't work as a team.
Yeah.
Because everyone sees things, and maybe one person has something that can help that person if you ask around, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other advantages of a bishop counseling? I liked his analogy at the beginning of a car. Did y'all remember that part where he talks about there's a lot of councils out there that are running on just a couple of cylinders or only one cylinder? Yeah.
Oh, and then it burns out faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it won't be as fast or as smooth.
And that goes back to being a two-way street again, right, Skylar? Because if you're the bishop and you're not delegating, you're doing it to yourself. You're burning yourself out if you're not asking for help.
And you have all the help you need right there in your council. So I like that.
It's the same for commanders and everything. So, or any boss. It's usually the difference between a good boss. That's why I tell you the difference between a good doctor and a bad doctor is a good doctor talks to you and listens to you and realizes you're not everybody else, that you're not the textbook, that everybody's a little different.
Yeah.
And realize that you know something about your own body.
Yeah. That your norms, not,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Very important.
What is next?
Let's see, part 4. If we're gonna, I know it says we're supposed to do like this really long meeting.
Yeah,
but I think it's because there's only 3 of us. We're not having to go around to 6 people and ask everybody.
Right.
I don't know if I've covered everything they say. I think we have, but I highlighted, tried to hit the. I'm gonna go back to one section. Have any of y'all ever been in a situation where you feel like you've gained from the diversity of the group?
I'm sure I have. I gotta think.
It's like we all hate discussion boards, but to me, I learn a lot from different people's points of view.
Yeah. Just from our group, is that what it's asking?
No, it's saying, have you had that experience in your life at all?
Yeah, well, any place I've worked, there's always been like different people who have different strengths. Like right now I work at the school in the AV department. It's not a super huge group, but there's some people who have worked in AV, audio visual for years and years and years, and this is just a side job. Other people, it's their first time they've ever, been around technology or audio visual equipment or whatever, and so it's a lot of people have different ideas to bring to the table on how to make it
AV's
better.
changed so much over the last 3 decades.
And so it's like we have our boss who he's been in audio visual, he's been in stage productions, he's been backstage managers to like singing groups and things like that, so he's had a ton of different experiences. So he's kind of the go-to guy, obviously, as our boss, but then everybody underneath him, it's interesting to see the people that he hires.
They each have different experiences, right?
Yeah, and I talked to him about kind of what he looks for in hiring, because we just hired somebody new, and so I was asking him, well, how do you decide who gets hired and who doesn't? Because obviously the people that you've hired, some people are very, very experienced. Other people, you're like, how did you even get this job? But he just said, well,
you look at him and go, who do you know?
Yeah, exactly. So he said, well, I go based on my gut feeling. So I do the qualifications first. So looking at resume, bring in who's qualified. Then between that, he's like, I normally have a pretty good gut feeling when it comes to who I hire and who I don't hire. He's like, I've only been wrong twice in my, 25 years of experience.
In other words, the person put on a good performance for him.
Exactly. And so he's like, well, it's just a gut feeling and it comes to, comes down to that. And so when we were talking about, sometimes it's not always based on who's qualified. It's based on, a trust or a gut feeling or, intuition or whatever you want to call it. And sometimes that works to the benefit of the group and sometimes that doesn't. Sometimes it's better to just go with the most qualified. And so
That's
I
what
just thought it was an interesting perspective to see how, like, an employer, how he hires people. So.
I had a major let me come to work for him one time, and right before I was getting ready to leave, because I had some difficulties with something he laughed about. I knew how things work, but I didn't know the technical names for things.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him one time, I said, "So why'd you let me work for you?" He says, "I knew you could be trained." That's, it sounds like a weird qualifications, but some people only want to do things their way and they can't be trained.
Yeah.
When I was teaching my daughter how to tie her shoes, I couldn't teach her. I had to let her dad do it. She just didn't want to learn from me. They're just sometimes there's personality conflicts, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think you answered the question when the last one was, what approach would you take to diversity as a manager? Do you have anything to add to that, Christy? How would you do it?
How would I do it as manager? Approach diversity. Okay, that's a big question.
She goes, come back to me.
I guess like they've been saying, just communicate with people, have meetings, value different opinions, like ask people for their opinions. Don't just hand down directives, ask for people's input and really listen and really take it into account and
listen more than with just your ears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever noticed sometimes there's some people that you can kind of tell they have an opinion, but they're shy and they don't want to tell you in public, in the group. Whereas if you can get them off to the side and talk to them a little bit and say, oh, no, that's a really good idea. I want you to bring it up in the group next time to encourage them to participate more.
That's a really good idea because, I'm kind of like that person. Like, it's hard for me to talk in front of the group. So, I appreciate that some people see it.
Yeah, some people see it. My husband, he went on an interview and it was like on his third one called back. And they put him in a room with like 2 or 3 people and they kept swapping out people. They were actually trying to intimidate him and aggravate him to see how he could handle stress. They kept him in there like 3 or 4 hours.
Interesting.
Weird, right?
That is weird.
Yeah. But it was a qualification for the job, and it's not one you can see on paper or just doing an interview. You kind of had to do it like a psychological stress test on somebody. So it's kind of weird, but and a lot of companies have gone to that approach, unfortunately, and they want you to interact with some of the team members you're going to interact with to see how you're going to get along. So you may be qualified, but are you going to get along with everybody?
Yeah.
So, all right. Let's see. I think that covers.
Cool.
Discussion leader. So I'm going to stop the broadcast so we can talk to you and not have to worry about anything. Okay.
Okay.